backpack, and we're going to start our panel on data journalism. I think it's another great, fascinating panel. So, Aaron, you can rock and roll.
Should they come up? How do you want to do this?
Yeah, you're going to go one by one.
One by one, and then
announce, and then
great.
We put the chairs. Okay.
Great.
Yeah. And you can have a. Just as an entrepreneur, I want to remind you that you can donate for this nonprofit and have a T-shirt or a journal or a beautiful journal downstairs, and have some money to monetize the next ISOJ. So that's a good that's a good interval for a commercial. Oh my God. Have a mic there that's working.
Okay. All right. Okay, that was the quickest change out I've ever done in front of a large audience. Okay, so I'm Aaron Pilhofer. I'm the editor of interactive news at the New York Times. My God, this room goes up high. This is a very weird, almost. Okay. Rosenthal asked me to come down, and this is my second time to this conference. Should be. It's good. Don't worry.
Okay.
We're all good.
Okay.
See? What did I tell you? Okay. So this is the second time I've been here, and my first time here was, what was it, 3 years ago? 4 years ago? It was a while ago. 3 years. And at that point, we had just sort of started this team that I run now at the New York Times, which I call Interactive News. The team is now grown to about 14 people. At the time, it was about 4. And what we do is a radical departure, I think, from, at least in my experience, what I used to do, which is straight up print reporting. Data is part of the reason why. The ubiquity of data, the availability of data, and the need to bring data and data journalism into the mainstream of newsrooms. So that's kind of the purpose of today's panel, is to look at the spectrum of how newsrooms are using data, how data is changing the way we tell stories, and how the availability of data is providing new avenues for journalists to do different kind of work, and actually changing, I think, the very definition of who a journalist is, as will be evidenced by my co-panelists who will be up here in a moment. So when we talk about data, we kind of think of this, right? Spreadsheet, columns, rows. How many of you just went to sleep? Probably a very large portion. I will admit to you that you are probably not like me. I see columns and rows like this, and the hair on my arms stand up. I couldn't get more excited by this. But I will admit, I am not like you or most normal people. But let's think a little more broadly, though. I want to change how we think about data. I want you to take that spreadsheet right out of your brain and think about data like this. So Paul Bradshaw, who's an academic in the UK, I think, to me, this is the absolute best definition of data out there. And basically, it's this. It is information that can be processed by computers, full stop. Full stop. Now, I'll give you some examples of how changing your thinking about data can impact journalism in a second. But this is my working definition of data for today. So you've seen things like this. This is our house map. This is from the wonderful work of our graphics team and my own team doing the data behind it. And this you can look at and say, all right, that's data. But what about this? How many people have seen this interactive graphic before? Now, if I had, yeah, I'm getting the from the audience. I don't have an internet connection here, but do yourself a favor, and don't do this now, please, because there's sound involved. But Google this, fractions of a second, an Olympic medal. To my mind, this is the most amazing data-driven graphic I have ever seen. This is Amanda Cox, and I had nothing to do with this, by the way. I'm just a massive fan, borderline fanboy of her work. And to take the problem of telling a story driven by data, and turn it into something like this is truly amazing. But data can also be this. I don't know if my friend Alistair is going to talk about this or not, but everybody's tried to use other sorts of, we'll call it non-traditional forms of data. In this case, Twitter. Everybody's tried to do things with Twitter. Most of them stink. This does not stink. This is using the idea of a social network and bringing it into a news context and actually telling a story with it. And how did they do that? What they did is there was human intervention here. They got all these tweets around the London riots, and they wanted to study and answer one simple question: how did rumors propagate across social networks, and how were they corrected? And they had to do that in a very both complicated technically, but also very simple way. They asked the right questions. What are the rumors? Are animals actually being let out of the zoo? Are they running wild in the streets of London? And how did that propagate across Twitter? It's an amazing interactive. Data also can look like this. This is PolitiFact, started by Matt White and Bill Adair at the St. Pete Times. Here you're taking a very traditional form of journalism. This is basic watchdog reporting. This is fact-checking. And you're blowing it up, and you're rebuilding it into the web, into a web context, into a digital context, where every promise is a data point, and every promise kept is a data point. And you can then go through here as a reader and find out what has Obama kept, what has he not kept, and sort of keep track. This is an interesting approach. This also can be data. Politics Verbatim, this is a project started at California Watch, which is doing some incredible data work these days, particularly the project they did around earthquakes, which if you haven't seen it, you should look. This is an interesting approach because it takes something that is not structured data. In this case, what politicians are saying. This is the Jerry Brown-Meg Whitman race from a couple of years ago. And where they're saying it. So it's taking what they're saying on one axis and putting it on a second axis where they're saying it. So what Jerry Brown says in Northern California about immigration versus Southern California. What Meg Whitman says, you get the idea, right? Interesting idea. And there's more of that. This can be data. This is the word train. This is a project we launched in 2008 at the Times. Gabe Dant, who's now at The Guardian, and myself worked on this. The idea here was to crowdsource, essentially, a news story. Anybody who's ever covered politics knows that the day of an election is probably the most news-free day of the election, right? Okay, a few of you laughed, and those are the political reporters out there, because you know on election day, there's absolutely nothing to report, right? The politicians show up, they kind of wave at the camera, they go into the voting booth, they wave at the camera again. That's it. That is what we have to report. But you also get this sense that there's this kind of collective holding of breath, right? Because you know that as soon as those polls close, you're going to start getting some results, and then the news is going to happen. So Gabe wanted to capture that in a kind of an interesting way, and this was his idea. Just a simple question. What one word describes your mood right now? And then at every hour, we snapshotted it. And we asked you if are you a McCain supporter, Obama supporter, or neither. And as you can imagine, you can imagine how this worked. But it turned into a really interesting narrative. And as the readers sort of filled in the data points for us, you could see about, obviously 6, 8 o'clock, how these things diverged. And finally, I love this project. It's been an ongoing project of the LA Times for a very long time. It's the Neighborhood Project. I like this one in particular because the idea of a neighborhood is kind of a state of mind, right? It's not a defined thing per se. And they wanted to sort of capture that. They wanted to gather that data. So they sort of crowdsourced it. They said, hey, readers, here's what we think the neighborhoods around Los Angeles are. But you can take this map and you can adjust it and you can tell me where you think they are. And then they were able to overlap these differing boundaries and sort of figure out where people thought they lived versus where the so-called boundaries are. It's an interesting idea, interesting way to tell a story. So those are just some examples, and again, I just want to leave you with this idea that throughout this panel, that we need to sort of expand our minds a little bit about what we think of both as journalism, as data, and who journalists are. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Brian. What's that? Oh, I introduced him. Okay. Sorry. Brian, you're on this machine, right? Okay, I'm going to switch you back over then. Here you go. I first met Brian Boyer when he was a student at Northwestern. And he comes from an interesting background. So maybe I'll let him talk a little about that. Are you going to talk about that? No. No, not at all. So I'll talk about it. He was an ASP.NET developer, which if anybody's ever hacked ASP.NET knows that is a special kind of hell. He went from there, decided he wanted to join the forces of light, went and got himself a journalism degree, and now he is the apps, he runs the apps team at the Chicago Tribune.
Okay, this is not what I want. Give me a browser. Hi, everybody. Is this thing working? We are hardwired, right? All right. Give this a moment. Okay, this should say this morning. I've given this talk before. All right, these slides are timed, so work with me. I'm Brian Boyer, News Applications Editor at Chicago Tribune. Now I'm going to wait for the next slide. All right, so this is a pile of sunflower seeds, but they're not sunflower seeds. They are in fact made of clay. Each one was handmade and decorated. It's a beautiful, moving piece of art. I find it incredibly inspiring and required great craftsmanship and skill. These, on the other hand, are cups. They are also made of clay. They are also handmade and hand-decorated by my friend Emily, and they require great skill. They may even move or inspire you, but they have something else going for them, which I'll get to in a moment. All right, so I've worked in clay since I was in high school. It sustained my spirit through many shitty jobs. But a lot of what I learned in the ceramic studio informs what I do today, so I hope you'll find what I'm saying interesting. All right, so here are two beautiful mugs. I could talk for an hour about how they were made, the clay body they were made with, the throwing technique, the glaze chemistry and how it interacts in the atmosphere with the kiln, and the total insanity of the people who made these damn things, as evidenced by their textures. But look closely at the handles. On the left, the handle is angled so your finger supports the mug by the handle. On the right, the handle is round and the side of the mug rests against your finger. Now what happens, guess, when you fill these mugs with coffee? Both of these objects are useful. Both required skill and craftsmanship, but god damn it, when I use a mug, I expect to be able to drink hot liquids. The blue mug is art and craft. The brown mug is merely art, unless you're drinking iced tea. So a mug must be useful. Craft is a step above and beyond art, where your finger rests, how your lips meet the lip, the heft, the comfort of the handle. Usability is required for craft. All right, so if you think powders are sexy and you'd like to bag one, find a pottery booth at a craft fair. Lots of folks will pick up a mug. They'll feel its weight. They'll contemplate a cup of coffee. But you will know the potters when they flip it over and they ponder the foot. Because it's the foot where the craft is revealed. A coarse or sloppy foot is an indicator of poor quality. Ugly pots invariably have bad feet. But there are also a lot of beautiful, artful objects that will scratch your coffee table. So you're probably asking yourself, why the hell is Brian talking about mugs at a data journalism panel, right? And I'll tell you why. It's because what we do is a craft. News applications should be made for use. Used by people you care about. Not your peers, not an awards committee, your audience. Now, data visualizations are not, on their own, useful. They are art. Now, I like art. I made this damn thing. But I believe if we only make art, we are doing our audience a disservice. How many colorblind people are in this room? Raise your hands. Not too many. This map sucks for those people. All right. So make your data beautiful. make your news applications moving, make them inspirational, but for frack's sake, please everyone make them useful. Because, all right, so we're still going. The journalists want to tell interesting stories. Designers, they all want to make beautiful things. And engineers want to solve big, interesting problems. And we all must be stopped. You must have a process that controls for your urges. Because it's so easy to get carried away by a fun idea, right? Our team has a simple exercise we run at the beginning of every project. We ask, who are our users? What are their needs? And what can we build to fulfill their needs? Example 1. Wait for it. I have nursing home data. Who are our users? People with loved ones in nursing homes. What are their needs? They just read a scary story about nursing home safety, and they want to know if their grandmother is safe. What can we build? Nursing home safety reports. Example 2. I have fire safety data. Who are our users? People who live in high-rises. What are their needs? They just read a scary story about fire safety in high-rises, and they want to know if they're safe. What can we build? A thing that lets them look up if they're safe. My mom loved this thing. But both of these apps had geodata, right? We could have made awesome maps. Both of these apps had time-related data. I could have made fancy, crazy timelines, right? They would have been beautiful. It would have been moving to see all those unsafe places scattered around a map. But no, goddammit, that's just not useful. Don't do it. The written story will speak to the trend. It'll include 3 anecdotes of people who died in fires or got knifed in a nursing home. But what are the readers, that's not funny, but what are the readers to do when they're finished, right? Our work sings when it helps readers find their own story in the data, how this issue impacts their own lives. So I hope you'll take this information home. Craft is useful, fight your urges, know your audience, and please make useful stuff. And also, show your work.
So Alberto Cairo, I met him, gosh, I think at this conference originally, right?
In 2004.
2004, yeah, it's been a long time. And we keep running into each other in all kinds of places, but here we are again in Brazil, and yeah, he spoke Portuguese to me the last time I saw you. It was very weird. No, it was a gorgeous language, but he was speaking to me. I don't speak Portuguese. Anyway. He is an amazing graphic artist, multimedia journalist, has a background in education. He was the graphics director at Epoca in Brazil and all kinds of other things. He's just really smart, so here he is.
Well, thank you. Yeah, full screen mode will be fine underneath the internet. Well, hello, I'm Alberto Cairo. I would like to thank Rosenthal and the University of Texas for having me again. This is the 3rd time, I believe, that I speak at this conference, and it's always a great experience. Actually, my short presentation is going to be like a follow-up to Brian's, because some of the points that he made are really interesting, are really important, and I really care about them, which is that for making a visualization or an information graphic appealing to readers, first of all, you have to make it useful. One of the core ideas in my courses at the University of Miami, where I am teaching right now, information graphics and visualization, is that an information graphic is above all a tool for understanding. But it's also a tool for presenting information and also for exploring the information. Those are the 2 sides of information graphics. And there are certain trends in information graphics and visualization that worry me a little bit today. In the past, information graphics used to be mostly about editing information down. So you got a lot of data, a lot of information, and then you try to cram it into a presentation, and you dump it down. You just edit it down, and that's an example. That's a very recent example, because that trend of dumping data down is still in very good health. And that worries me, because this is the presenting side of information. This is just presenting information to readers. But we are not allowing readers to explore the information, to explore the data behind all those graphics that you are creating. So this is a traditional kind of information graphic that I had to deal with when I was working in newsrooms. Today, we have the opposite trend, which is basically that, and this is gaining momentum, as I say there, that because data is increasingly available and we have the tools to handle that data very easily and to process it, we end up having things like these that are basic, and this is an extreme example, which is basically data art. It's not data journalism, it's art. It shows the connection, the cross-references in the Bible. And don't get me wrong, I think that this is extremely beautiful, but it has to do with what Brian said before. This is not really journalism because it doesn't really help you understand anything. It's just a beautiful presentation of data. It allows you to explore the data if you know what the data is about beforehand. So if you can bring some previous knowledge to the table, you will be able to understand what this is. But as long as I am not I'm not a very good reader of the Bible, I don't really know what this thing is about. I don't really care. So, but we see this in the media. Today, if you go to the New York Times, for example, you will see things like these, and this is an extremely beautiful, extremely nice presentation. And my first reaction when I saw it, it's called Mapping America. It's basically getting all the data from the recent census and just cram it into a beautiful map built on Google Maps, and it's very beautiful. And my first reaction when I saw it, it was that, this is extremely cool. And I started exploring it, etc. But after 5 minutes, my reaction was, so what? What is this useful for? I just went looking for my neighborhood. I saw the data from my neighborhood, but it didn't allow me really to compare with other neighborhoods or to find the structure of the data. It didn't allow me to rank neighborhoods or to compare one thing to the other. It didn't tell me anything beyond what I was seeing about my neighborhood. I didn't get any story. So in some sense, there are many designers out there and also many programmers that are forcing readers to become their own editors. And journalism is about reporting. We are doing data reporting. But in data journalism, I believe that the editing process is even more important than the reporting process, particularly in these times when data is increasingly available. So we have to become editors in some sense. We should not just show readers data and throw data to the readers, but beyond that, we should also extract the meanings from those data and explain what those data means. That's what journalism is about in the future. We have to help readers somehow. And we have to create layers in our information graphics. We have the presentation layer, and we also have the exploration layer. The previous infographic was all about exploration. You just throw those data into your readers and you let the readers figure it out. You let the readers navigate. That's exploration. Readers extract their own stories from those data. But we also have to present some sort of summary of that data beforehand. And we have to explain readers how to navigate that presentation beforehand. We also must embrace complexity. And this is something that all-time infographics artists don't really understand, that complexity is something useful sometimes. Showing all those data, the complexity of the data is very useful and very interesting. But you have to arrange it in a way that the human brain can understand. It's also appropriate to use novel graphic forms, interesting looking, innovative kinds of infographics that you see in a computer science academic paper. You saw it the other day and you want to apply it to your own work. Well, that's great. But then you have to think beforehand, is this something that adapts to the data? Is this something that adapts to the story? Is this something that will advance the story, that will get the message through? You have to think about that also as well. There is a motto or a mantra that was pushed out by Ben Schneiderman in 1996 called the visual information seeking mantra. You will find it over the internet. Schneiderman has written broadly about information visualization. I think that this sentence summarizes what information visualization should be about and how to balance out the presentation layer and the exploration layer. First of all, you present a summary. First of all, you overview the data. What are the most important points? What are the main things that I should extract from those data? How I use this application? That's the presentation layer. And once you have shown that to readers, once you have presented readers with the most important points of your data, of your story, then you allow readers to navigate the story and get to the exploration side of the story. You let them zoom, you let them filter, you let them see all the details of the information. But you cannot have, or you should not have, one thing without the other. Both are equally important. How to do that? Well, in the past, I'm not going to show this project, but basically, this is a project that I made with my team when I was working in Brazil. I am in Miami right now. but until December 2010, I was working for Época magazine in Brazil that belongs to a global group of communication. And I built a small data team and a small infographics team. And we put out a lot of very interesting projects, in my opinion. One of them is this. And this is a project, if you Google it, it's called a Telefone Vermelho, red telephone. It basically summarizes how much Brazilian congressmen and congresswomen spend a year on telephone. And those numbers are basically outrageous. Actually, when we published this infographic, it created a national roar in some sense because they spend so much. Readers were not really aware of how much money those people spend on telephone over a year. It's just a huge number. And this graphic, it shows you the two sides of data. It shows you the two sides of visualization. First of all, you have the presentation layer, the summary layer, how much those people have spent in total. And that's 13 billion reais, which is around $6 billion combined, all of them, in a year, which is a huge number. When you transform that number, and this also belongs to the presentation layer, when you say to readers, well, that's the amount of money they have spent through 1 year, in the last year. When you divide that by the average cost of a local phone call, a Brazilian phone call, well, it turns out that if you want to spend that amount of money talking on the phone yourself, you will pick up the phone today, and you will end up your conversation 300 years from now. That's the reason why the main headline of the graphic is 300 years of phone talking, because that's the main idea of the graphic. So that's the presentation layer of the graphic. And then after that, you allow readers, and that's the part over there, you allow readers to look for their own representative, for their own congressman. So you can click on those balls, you can compare one congressman to another congressman, you can look for a specific political party, or you can look for a specific state in Brazil to see just those congressmen. That's the exploration layer of visualization. But you should not have one without having the other. Both are equally important, and you have to find out what the right balance between those two layers is in your graphics. So thank you so much.
So next up is Alistair Dant, who is gosh, I don't even know what your title is. He runs the interactive team at The Guardian. I've known him for many years, and the last time we were together, I walked out on a substantial bar tab, so I owe him a lot. He's also responsible for some of the amazing interactive graphics you see across the Guardian website. And we'll be over here shortly.
No expert with microphones, but okay, this seems to be on the last slide rather than the first one, so that might be a bit confusing to people. Can we put it to the first slide?
Yeah, you can use the left arrow.
Yeah, but I'll just have to go through the entire deck to get there. I mean, people can watch it backwards if they want, but all right. Okay. Right. Hi, everyone. So I'm here today from The Guardian in London. And what I wanted to do, I'm actually going to just quickly say that I feel very lucky to have been sort of blessed with a surname that begins with D, because it means that in the alphabetical order, I've now come after Brian and Alberto, who are actually kind of, I guess, sort of like covering a lot of the issues which this work that I'm going to show you touches upon as well. But I'm probably not going to talk so much about the sort of more philosophical aspects of it. I'll just show you the work, and I'll talk about three categories of sort of telling stories with data. So the first thing is really plotting a path through events. And more to the point, I think it sort of coincides with the idea that you can actually make a visualization from the raw data directly. And sometimes that data has a sort of emotional power in its own right. So in this case, when we were covering the first WikiLeaks war log dump, which was Afghan IED attacks, a discussion was had editorially. Julian Assange expressed a preference to give people something like a video. But giving people just a simple playback of many, many thousands of events in space and time was only sort of one part of telling the story. We wanted people to also be able to stop at any point on that timeline, add filters, zoom into the map, and actually get to the point where you could click on any single one of those individual events and find out the details of it. So what we've got there is hopefully an encapsulation of some of the things that Alberto was talking about. And here down the bottom, we've got this line chart which shows you the volume of attacks over time, so you get a sort of sense that it's ramping up in addition to what's happening here in the chart. And we've also got a bit of an annotation layer as well there. And I think the idea of an annotation layer is one of the places where the kind of editorial voice really comes out. So I want to sort of move on from this to a second example, which is, I think, characteristic of something a little bit different. We began a project with the World Cup in 2010. And I had this kind of notion in my head that I wanted to get the feeling of the roar of the crowd passing through Twitter. So we built this interactive here, which I'm not sure how well you can see because the kind of gray doesn't work so well. But basically, we took a recording of all the tweets that occurred in every match. Every minute of every match, we figured out what the most popular words were. And then we created a playback where 90 minutes of a football game were turned into sort of 90 seconds of flying balls. And as these balls fly around, the places where kind of human energy is most present become reflected in the activity of the ball. So there's something about the way that data itself is a record of something. But to make that record speak to people, sometimes you have to bring it to life. Now, that alone is not the whole story. What we've got here is a follow-up project which we put together around about the time last year where the Murdoch family was answering political questions. And what you can see here is the volume at the start of the day is quite pronounced. People are quite interested in what the Murdochs are going to say, and it kind of gradually starts to tail off because they're fending off all the questions that they're being posed quite effectively. So as this sort of timeline progresses, you actually see that the words here start to drift away from what they're talking about in court because people are getting bored. And then what we've added there on the left is a sort of a sense of editorial annotation. We've basically put in a kind of set of key moments that our editors have picked out. But here's the good bit. Here's a sort of money shot. And what I think is really important to just sort of note at this stage is that it's not only adding these annotations on the left-hand side that kind of makes this piece work. It's the fact that, A, we were lucky enough to be recording at the right time, and B, we were then able to sort of make a kind of editorial judgment as to exactly where it should start and end. And so that's almost a bit like editing video at that point. So if you imagine that data is a kind of raw material, at the point where you're bringing it to life, you have to exercise the kind of editorial sense in terms of which bits of that videotape, which bits of that recording are most interesting to people. So I want to talk about open data because I think that the project which is closest to my heart right now is an attempt to start making some open tools for working with open data. And the genesis of the sort of example that we've built to show off these tools starts with something that happened a couple of years ago. The government in the UK is increasingly committed to transparency. And in order to give people this sense of transparency, they put all of their spending information into a set of PDF documents. So anyone that's actually sort of worked with trying to scrape data or kind of fetch data in those circumstances knows that a PDF is actually almost a purposely obscure way of making that document available. But fortunately, our data blog team did the kind of grunt work required to get all that out of the PDF into a spreadsheet format, which is then shared on the web. Now, our graphics team were able to do something with that, which I think kind of is a really good example of how print graphics differ from online graphics. So what you can do in print is you can give a center spread to something like this, and you've got an enormous amount of kind of, I can't remember what Tufty calls it, something like ink space. But basically, you've got an enormous amount of detail that wouldn't actually work if you tried to put it online all in one visual field. I think what Alberto was saying, which is really important, is the fact that when you create something online and you create an interactive interface, you can make that interface work in a kind of incremental way. So people can move through and explore, perhaps sometimes in a guided way, and not necessarily have to deal with everything at once. So this is what we ended up putting online. It's basically something we call the spending challenge. And the idea here is that you can actually decide which cuts you want to make yourself. And you can go, you see a tree map here which gives you an overview of the different departmental spending, but you can go into any of these departments and you can actually sort of see a rather kind of editorialized list of possible cuts. And then you can make a blanket cut here because you really don't like the idea that we spend so much money on defense, so you cut half of that. And you go on and you go on. And what we also did for this project, which I think is actually a pretty useful thing for us to sort of revisit in the future, is we made it possible for people to share their cuts with others. So we basically set a very simple kind of like encoding system that put all people's choices into a URL, which they could then you know, kind of take this armchair economist pose and share with all their friends and say, here's how I would solve the budget problem. And we opened up, this is the way you do it sort of down here, we opened up comments on this page. And what we found was that this actually triggered a debate. The ability to point people in at your kind of vision is a good way to stimulate debate. And I think this idea of creating a tool like this, which is almost a sort of like an open-ended tool, it's something where you can kind of find your own path through the data. And then you can share that. And I think that's potentially an interesting way that you can start to make these things work in the context of a public website, because you can basically invite people into a discussion. And anyway, getting to the kind of most interesting fact, 9 times out of 10, people solved the 49 billion deficit by cutting Scotland, which is about 52 billion. So this brings me on to the sort of main thing that I wanted to highlight today, which is a project that we've just started development on in January. It's called the MISO project. And basically what we're doing here is we're using some money from the Gates Foundation to develop a set of open source tools. And what those tools will hopefully do is enable us to get to a stage where when we create an interactive piece, we'll no longer just be publishing it up in a way that sort of you know, preserves our dignity, as the chap was saying earlier. We actually want to make the kind of code and the data that make the piece work public. And we want that to be a start of a conversation. So the idea with MISO is that we'll start using a standard set of tools to build all of our work, which we're also sharing with people, so that anytime you see, in this case, we did a kind of remake of the Cabinet Office spending graphic using the new tools. And anytime you see a piece, and you know, assuming that everybody keeps to their New Year's resolution of learning to code this year, you can actually open that piece up and start making your own version of it. So, you know, obviously, if you don't live in the UK, you might have other spending office data to look at. And for that reason, I think that this is a sort of set of tools which could be useful to a kind of wider community, because, you know, the more this data is opened up and surrounds us, the more we need a way of kind of engaging people in conversation about what that data means. So, yeah, if you want to follow along with the project, we've got a sort of Twitter thing here, the MISO project, and we'll be sort of sending updates as we put these libraries out throughout the year. Okay, thanks.
So we're going to go from the UK to Argentina. Angelica Peralta Ramos. God, I butchered that. I was practicing that all morning. I really screwed that up. Is the multimedia director at La Nación in Buenos Aires, and she's going to talk a little bit about her work.
Yes. The video icon. What is? Well, good morning. You've seen this. These are my gurus. Those who you've seen just now. I'm Angelica Peralta Ramos from La Nación in Buenos Aires, Argentina. We are in a very, very different context there. First, I want to talk about La Nación. It's based in Buenos Aires, Argentina, with a Sunday print circulation of 360,000 that has grown the last 4 years at 4% per year. La Nación's unique.com unique visitors per month is 8 million. We have 9 magazine titles, and we just bought 90% of Impremedia, that is a US Hispanic leading publishing company. Most of you may know. So a little about Argentina. Transparency, you just say. We are positioned in the 100 over 180 in the corruption perception index, so we have an issue with transparency too. And we think data can help. We have no FOIA, no Freedom of Information Act, but we have a decree, and I think this is outdated because Brazil is now better than us. So if we ask for information in Argentina, perhaps when it's answered, it comes in paper. We are not participating now in the Open Government Partnership that 8 countries and 55 other countries are participating to work in open government and open data. And of course, we don't have a data.gov portal. But there is hope. There are portals in Argentina that are opening, and data is opening from the hacktivist world more than from official. But these are Buenos Aires data is from the government of Buenos Aires. Our judiciary system, Open Government Initiative 2, we have. The World Bank has lots of statistics also from Argentina, and INDEC has census data and lots of data in good quality. In La Nación, we found ourselves, we want to do data journalism, but we had no programmers in the newsroom, no team of 14 programmers. But we have a team that was willing to learn, and so we moved on, and we just said, what are we going to do? We're going to sit back and wait for others to build data sets? No, we started doing it ourselves. We think that information is there, but we have to make an extra effort and convert it ourselves. So we love PDFs. We decided to start small, to friend our IT and BI departments, and to start from scratch with IT and BI departments. And to learn some tools for non-programmers, just to have quick results. Yes, like Tableau Public, Excel for databases, and ClickView to analyze large data sets. And to build once and use many, have this approach for investing in developing data sets. So just one case study, we have 2 case studies. With Argentina's inflation data, in 2007, the government intervened in our national statistics initiative, and since then, INDEC has reported an annual inflation below 11%. Economists and provincial governments started reporting higher inflation rates, private consultants too. And in March 2011, Argentina fined firms over inflation data. They could not communicate this in their own CPIs. These firms teamed up with opposition in Congress, and now they are releasing monthly this inflation data. And also The Economist says, don't lie to me, Argentina. So this, and they removed the figures from The Economist. So one very smart journalist in La Nación, he took this simple example of, if inflation is related to poverty, and we cannot speak about inflation, and we think this has effects in poverty. This is a slum in Argentina 10 years ago, and with Google historical images, he shows, well, 2010, look at this. And the title says, will the government find Google Earth? This is another example of the same thing. Another example to show what we say, data can show what we cannot tell. This is another example. We took a Consumers Association price index data set that contains 28 products of the supermarket. It's measured since 2002. And it always comes in the newspapers as a press release. This is a press release. We love this press release, but we convert it into a data set. And so we can show this price index in the two baskets, the leader and the economy one. But also, with the same data set, and we keep it monthly updated, we have the 28 products. So we have stories we can make with data of everyone and comparisons with Tableau Public that has a dynamic interface with data. This is a yerba mate story, for example, that you can do it. You can steal these infographics, and you can do it, compare it with another of your country, for example. The other thing we did, we put official inflation, and every month we update this with the private consultants' inflation that is released in Congress. So these are many ways to show the same as a map also. Another case, and this is our open, 1 month ago we started opening data ourselves with our sources, our own sources for journalists. We made a team and we are converting things to Excel, to CSV. We are releasing this in our open data dashboard. It's powered by Junar, that is an open data platform, like perhaps you know Socrata, Bus Data, and these many like the new YouTubes of data that are out there. We integrated that into our platform, and now we have more than 100 data sets that we are keeping updated. Another case is the subsidies for the bus transportation system that we, Diego Cabot suggested we transform 400 PDFs of more than 1,000 rows each in 3 categories of subsidies. This was impossible to do, to process as a human, to analyze the information of each company that was receiving payments in cash every month. And subsidies were growing in Argentina a lot. For example, this is a PDF that has more than 1,000 lines. And this is coming without totals, but we have another that has totals. And just I wanted to show you the program running. We are developing scrappers as a video, to convert these public data and to build our own data sets. Let's see if it's the sound. Yeah. Yeah. We made the effort to make it in English, but it was the program working. No, this not, please. Okay.
Rainbow wheel.
No, this is not. I have the 2 minutes left. Inflation, little inflation. Yes, this. Yeah. Play. Brian told me I have his extra minutes. Yes, we negotiated before. Inflation. Okay, it worked. In the meantime, this is not the video. When I'm telling you that we are also committed to opening data, but there's no open data movement in Argentina. So we just, as a medium, we feel we have the duty to do it ourselves, and we are doing it. And that's why we are building the databases ourselves. We have launched a data blog, like following the Guardian's idea. And all these New York Times and Los Angeles Times are wonderful places to learn with their blogs where they explain how they do their work in data visualizations and everything. Okay. I follow with the presentation. We tried it yesterday. Well, I tell you that we are doing also an explorer of this subsidies data set. It's 235,000 rows. We found that these PDFs were changing and the payments were going backwards, so they were updated backwards. And so we took this challenge to a hackathon in Boston. And Matt Perry is a programmer, a Python programmer. He said this is a difficult challenge. He made a code for this that it's called PDF Spy. And he solved this problem of looking backwards for PDFs that are overwriting themselves. And we copied that. And now we are monitoring the changes of PDFs 2 years from now. And also we are working in this open data platform. And I'm very sorry I couldn't show this video. We practiced this before, but okay. Thank you.
If you've got a laptop, it's just we can swap it out. It'll take two seconds.
Oh, okay.
All right. So next up, Ben Walsh, who is data producer
something like that
at the LA Times. Okay. You know what? I'm going to let you do this.
Oh, it's all right. Hey, everybody.
It has to be in the data part.
I actually don't need to get online because I have it up. All right. This is actually exciting for me. I'm going to get to put some Linux up on the big screen. Enough of this monoculture. All right. I don't need the remote. Okay. Yeah, sure. So, oh yeah, this is some awesome street art from downtown Los Angeles. But anyway, I didn't make it. All right. All right, cool. So I work at the LA Times. My name is Ben Welsh, and I need to get this on the big screen. Let's see. I think that'll do it. Boom. And it's too big. Linux. All right, we'll get by. So my name is Ben Welsh. I work at a team called the Data Desk at the Los Angeles Times, and my talk is called Human-Assisted Reporting, How to Create Robot Reporters in Your Own Image, if that's not clear right there. And so I was trained in a tradition of journalism which is called computer-assisted reporting. It's decades old. The whole idea is that we can be more efficient and do cooler and better investigative reporting by using computers, right? And this is an idea that's not new. It's been around for a long time, and the name kind of tells you that, right? You know, my joke always is that it's, you know, everyone's computer assisted now. Photographers, architects, pretty much any job you need to do, you use a computer, but you don't call it a computer assisted architect or a computer assisted reporter, right? It's only in journalism that we continue to distinguish ourselves with the use of Microsoft Excel, right? But anyway, so it's a spin on that term is what I want to talk about today, is this whole idea of computer-assisted reporting and thinking about it differently, right? And all the URLs and everything I talk about is going to be available right here on Delicious. All right, so it's just LATMS/robot reporters. Right? And so, in my opinion, this is how computer-assisted reporting works today, in an image, right? So your editor or you, the reporter, have an idea, something out in the world that you want to investigate and get to the bottom of, right? You pick up your weapon, your computer, and you go out hunting for it, right? And that's the way that most computer-assisted reporting gets done. Is people already kind of have an idea or a field or a data set or something they want to hunt, and they go out and look for it, right? And the idea that I kind of want to put out there as an alternative metaphor or way of thinking about what we do is this, which is from the movie Minority Report, which I love. And it says how it ought to be at the bottom there. And in this scene, there's these robotic spiders that are able to crawl all over and do an operation on Tom Cruise. And I think that if we can up our game in what we do in computer-assisted reporting, we don't have to go out hunting for the story, right? The computer can go hunt for it for us. Right, and bring it back to us. And where are we while that's all happening? Right? We're back at the bar with Cary Grant, our editor, talking about the next story, but also enjoying a drink, right? And this is a shot from the movie His Girl Friday, which if you haven't seen, do yourself a favor tonight. Right? And this idea first kind of came to me when I saw a website right here, which was created by Matt Waite, who's a leader in our field, now a professor at Nebraska. And he's famous for the website PolitiFact, but he made a lot of other sites in St. Pete, and this is one that's kind of gone now that he did about real estate. And it had a page for every neighborhood in Tampa Bay, or the Tampa area, and there was a map, which is now dead. This is from the Internet Archive. I had to kind of, pry this out. And it had the latest home listings and a list, and then it had this paragraph right there. And I read this paragraph, and it was what Matt calls a Mad Lib. Right? It was an automated paragraph written by an algorithm that said, based on this week's data in this neighborhood, here's the story, right? And for every neighborhood and every page, there was this same paragraph, but it had different information, and it was up or down depending on the trend in that area. And I saw that, and I said, my God, that's news, right? That's not even, it's like an automated news story. And that kind of inspired me to think about what I was doing in a different way. And at the Los Angeles Times, I've spent some time over the last few years experimenting with that. And I want to kind of show you how that process works and how you can create algorithms that write the news for you, right? And also find it, right? So what I'm going to do is teach you how to Dougie, right? So, all right, so let's go. Here's how you Dougie. Okay, 1, you find a simple, repetitive, and moving data stream that updates every day or with some frequency, right? Like home sales. In this case, this is an email that I receive with a list of blacked out other people every morning from the Los Angeles Police Department at about 2:30 in the morning. And it includes a CSV file, a spreadsheet that has everyone arrested the previous day and booked by the LAPD. Right? So I have my structured, simple, repetitive, moving data stream that lands in my inbox every day. Right? I then do a pull and a parse, and then I put it on loop. Right? So I write a script that goes into my inbox every day, looks for that email, looks for that attachment, pulls it in, parses it, loads it into a database, and then I set up a system so that just runs every day. It's just an automated data pull, right? Then I can, this is where the fun part comes in, the algorithm, that you can then write code that will ask and answer the common questions that a reporter would ask when they were looking at that same data set. There's so much of what we do, these questions we ask, what was the biggest, what was the most recent, these sort of basic journalistic questions we ask out of data that really can be turned into algorithms or code when you think about it. And these are just some examples that I was, that I thought of looking at this data set, right? And so and that can turn itself into code, right? So is this the first code of the conference? Right? If it is, I'm pretty proud. So this is an example of every day you would want to know, hey, what were the most severe things that people got arrested for yesterday? What were the biggest deals? And a proxy for that in the data is what their bail amount was set for. The worst thing you did, the higher your bail, most likely, right? So this is just a little bit of code that every day goes through that spreadsheet, sorts it from bail, from highest to lowest, slices it off and says, hey, I've got the list of the biggest bails, right? And what do I do with that? Oh, I send it out in an email to all the reporters who cover the police and crime for the LA Times, right? And we don't just get the list of the biggest bails and send them that. We also keep a watch list, right? We want to know anytime anyone who's a minister or a producer or a musician in their occupation field gets arrested, and that gets flagged, right? So instead of having to comb through this book every day as a reporter and spend all their time doing it, the computer can automate a lot of that process, right? And do it for you, and then send you a nice email. So that's like an alert. You also could make like a dashboard to drill down. This is an internal web page we keep at the LA Times that just has everybody arrested yesterday. But it also has some search features, so when someone is arrested for a major crime, we can go look for previous arrests, et cetera, et cetera. It's a research tool internally for us to use. And this is an example of another piece of code that then takes like a structured data set like that and turns it into a sentence, right? Where it sort of diagnoses certain things about the data and then writes a Mad Lib, writes a little sentence that kind of tells you something about it. This actually isn't crime. This is census data that we did for a neighborhood site we keep, and it wrote this sentence. So for every neighborhood in Los Angeles, we can write a sentence that tells you, one, the data point that's interesting to you, and some contextual comparison along with it that links to other stuff, right? And so that way, I wrote 250 of those by writing it once with a template. But really, what do you get out of doing this sort of thing, right? Well, one, you get breaking news, right? So this is an example where Puck from the real world was arrested. Not the biggest deal, but we scooped TMZ and had the news first in the world because the alert system caught it, right? We're watching closely through computer programming. Two, it's a way around PIOs. One of the biggest crimes in Los Angeles last year was on opening day of the Dodgers season. A man was brutally beaten, a San Francisco Giants fan, and it quickly became a symbol for the decay of the Dodgers organization and our former team owner, Frank McCourt. And the police arrested the wrong guy the first time. They screwed it up. And when they arrested the first guy, there was a big press conference. Oh, man, everybody's got to know, right? We got the guy. Well, it turns out it wasn't the guy. And when they finally find the people who really did it, they tried to kind of hide who they were arresting. There was like this they didn't want to tell the media right away who they were going to go busting. But I had the data. I didn't have to ask the PIO. It was in my system. It arrived at 2 in the morning, and we were the first reporters knocking on those neighbors' doors, figuring out who these guys were, because the system got us a step ahead. Right? You also get instant analysis. So Occupy LA was camped out across from the LA Times for 3 months. There was like a 3-day standoff with the police where they came and cracked down and rolled everybody out. When they did the big arrests, a couple hundred people, we were able to instantly do a census of all the people that were arrested and tell you something about them using this data. We actually published a list of all the people who were arrested and some other things about them that were in there. You get the automated copy. This is from our blog, The Homicide Report, where we try to track every homicide that happens in Los Angeles County, have a post for every person. We don't have enough resources to do a lot of reporting on all of that, but certain amounts of information based on the coroner's data can be automated, and then we write that. That's the bare minimum for every post is the automated paragraph, and then as we gather more information, we then write through that and add more to it. Right? This is a similar thing we do. This is an automated blog post written by the computer that runs a couple times a week when we get new LAPD crime data. It analyzes it for trends, and it tells you what neighborhoods in Los Angeles this most recent week have had having an uptick in crime historically. Right? And here's another thing from our crime site where it's all automated news. Same thing with earthquakes. My colleague Ken Schwenke did this. When an earthquake happens, everybody's going to the USGS site, copying and pasting. Where's the link? Fuck, I can't find it. Where is it? We don't got to do that. It's structured data. We have a computer system that just sits. Uh-oh, I better hurry. So we have a computer system that just automatically writes a blog post and sends it in as soon as it happens. Anyway, there's a lot of other stuff you can do this with, which would be fun. There's companies that are trying to make money off it, like Narrative Science is really good. They do some awesome stuff. I'm just making news. They're trying to make money. Who's smarter? I'm out of juice, right? And so I had a big finish to try to make a more serious point and kind of talk a little trash. I'm sad I won't going to make it. But that Narrative Science guy, the next slide was a quote that he delivered to the New York Times where he said, in full visionary startup, I am the future mode, right? Said, within 5 years, a computer program will win the Pulitzer Prize. And I'll be damned if it's not my software, right? Well, I hate to break it to him, but guess what? Computer programs have already won the Pulitzer Prize. They've won a half dozen of them, starting in 1989 with Bill Dedman's story in Atlanta, right? Color Money, that's right. And my point is that what we should really strive for is not just to automate for automation's sake or to save money, but what will really be great is if we can automate and make it easier and lower the barrier to do the kind of work that wins the Pulitzer Prize. That's already been done by people that come before us, and we need to be respectful and see what's in that tradition that's worth saving and worth automating and worth making more efficient, rather than just throwing it out, acting like it doesn't exist. Because, I work at an old line media institution. I complain about it every day. It drives me nuts. But there's also a hubris in the startup community around this idea that, that they don't need to learn anything from the past. So there's nothing worth saving about journalism. There's a lot worth saving, and there's a lot worth doing. And we're the people who are going to do it. And I'm getting emotional. But it's just, okay, some old newspaper guy didn't like your blog. Get over it. Write a story that's worth reading. Write a story that's worth Brian's mom reading. Let's fucking do it. I'm done. Yeah. All right.
Once PDF files are downloaded and converted to Excel, this program opens each one of the more than 240 files corresponding to subsidies paid to obtain information like the total amount received by each company, in cash and in gasoil, the amount received for each bus, and the evolution since 2006. Here we have running for cash subsidies from 2006 to 2011, and this moment is processing 2008 March, and the subsidy called CCP. After this, we run again for the gasoil subsidy. Then we run again the merge process, in which unifies cash and gasoil information, and then all this information is inserted in a database based on monthly and annual total information.
Hi, this is not to scare you out. This is just one little program that we customize to transform and to build data in Argentina, and then we open this data. So that's it.
And then just pass the mic? You do? I'm already All right. Do I need to? Okay, I'm turned on. I guess I can use it. All right. All right. Check. Mic check. Okay. All right. All right. I used to run the music hall in the student union, so I like doing that. Anyway, so I think everybody saw the range. So I think it's clear, right? The range of backgrounds and skills and approaches here, and this is, I think, just scratching the surface. I'm just curious. I have one quick question. I definitely want to open it up to the room here very quickly, but I just want to know, on this panel, who here would call themselves a journalist? Okay, so Alistair, why not?
I don't know if this. Okay. I wouldn't necessarily call myself a journalist yet, because I've been at The Guardian for about 3 years, and prior to that was very much just a software engineer. I'm learning about journalism. I feel like I'm some kind of alien observer in the world of journalism in some respects. But yeah, I think I'm kind of trying to find ways to facilitate journalism. But I'm probably more of a facilitator than a journalist myself.
Well, I'm not sure I would agree, actually. I think what you do is journalism, but I think we could discuss that.
The same for me. I am a computer scientist, and I don't code, but I understand data, and I find data as a convergence point between lots of skills. So that's a new opportunity for journalism, but I'm not a journalist, so that's why.
So what you're seeing is data people coming, or people coming from the code side, from the technology side, journalists coming to the technology side. You're seeing an interesting convergence, both on this panel and in the industry. Brian, why do you think that's important?
Okay. Because what we're doing is useful. I mean, golly, I don't know. Why do I think it's important in what context? Like,
why do you think it's? Where do you think this is taking the industry? Why do you think this is? What's changing? I mean, that's I think has been emphatically pointed out. We've been doing data analysis for years, maybe decades. We've been involving data in our journalism for decades. What's different about this? What we're talking about right now?
Well, there's mountains of data available at this point, right? You know, I guess one of the rants that I've been getting on. I might be borrowing one from you that our friend Derek Willis of the New York Times gets excited about, is about just the sheer quantities of data that is available to, let's say, I don't know, the Obama campaign or Philip Morris or somebody, and they have data scientists on staff. They have really, really smart, incredibly well-paid data analysts, quantitative sociologists. There are lots of names for these people, and they're using that data to sell you cigarettes or to get their candidate elected, and we don't know how to do that. I'm not a data scientist. I'm a programmer who knows how to work with databases and is slowly learning how to tell stories. I don't think anybody on this panel would call themselves a data scientist, and I don't think I know a single data scientist who works in journalism. It's a problem. It's a gap, and we have to. We've all got to up our games, and we've also, as an industry, have to bring in a lot more people that do that sort of work because we're ignorant.
I would add something to that, which is at this conference, Strata, I spoke at last year, which is a data science conference. There was actually a lot of attention paid to what journalists could bring to them, because the one thing I think that flows through everything that we've been talking about today is the ability to find the stories, to find a headline. I mean, every time we start a piece, we sit down and before we go any further, we have to know what the headline is. You know, so this is something. I know. I was saying to Brian yesterday that we're going to be like the crystal reports of the big data world. But yeah, journalists, I think, are increasingly.
That was a joke, by the way.
Yeah, sorry, it was a bad joke. But
An
yeah,
enterprise programming joke, actually.
I want to add something to that. I mean, I'm going to make a comparison between journalism, what is going on in journalism, and what's going on in science. If you take a look at scientific papers from 20 years ago, you only had, one author or two authors per paper. If you take a look at scientific paper today, you will see that each paper is authored by 16 people. And what that means is that the world is growing more complex. We have more complexity to deal with. And our work as journalists is to make sense of that complexity. But for making sense of that complexity, we have to bring together skills from many different areas. That's what's going on right now in the newsrooms. You need programmers, you need data scientists, you need information visualizers and designers and pure journalists, and you have to bring them together and to try to, to make sense of the world for your readers or for your audiences, or help them make sense of the world in some sense by creating tools that will allow them to do that. I think that that's the main difference between the past and the present.
And let me add one more community to that, and I think, Angelica, you mentioned this, who are outside of your newsroom, Not as much mine, unfortunately. Ben's, absolutely. So maybe you can talk a little bit about how newsrooms need to reach out beyond the four walls of the newsroom.
We are engaging with these communities in the local level in Buenos Aires. I recommend, we go to hackathons. Last Saturday I was in one. I went to 4 or 5 hackathons, Sundays, Saturdays. And if you want to learn, you have to go and try to understand and self-teach yourself. This is very important because who are there are programmers, are data scientists, are people who want to help, but they don't perhaps understand the business or the content you know as journalists. So this is very important to work in teams and to find the other part that you need and ask.
Ben, you guys have done a lot of crowdsourcing projects. You've reached out to the community extensively. Why have you chosen to do that, and what value do you think this brings in particular to your reporting?
Well, for one, it's a lot of fun, which is a good start. But I just think for instance, with the neighborhoods project we did, we knew there are no official boundaries. It's a long time disputed thing in the city of Los Angeles. So at the outset, we knew that there would be no right answers. It's not like the LA Times could draw the lines and they would be perfect. If that was possible, you might try. But we had the humility, I guess, at the outset to admit that, and that's where bringing in the outside made it, a lot more credible, I think, to our audience, and it resulted in a better product.
So 10 years from now, I'm curious. This is a toss-up question for the panel. 10 years from now, what's a newsroom going to look like?
Oh fuck!
Okay,
much
five
smaller.
years from now.
Much smaller.
Much smaller. Questions? Yeah.
Yeah, though hopefully leveraging technology in much more efficiently than I do, but in that same department to get stuff done. There's this old maxim that's much maligned in newsrooms: do more with less. We've just laid everybody off, but we're going to do more with less. It was parodied by David Simon on The Wire in the season he did there, and it's bullshit. I mean, it's a lie. It's not true. You can't in most cases. But there is one hope in that department, which is through software, technology, open source projects like MISO project, we can lower the barrier and increase our efficiency in how we work with stuff. And that really is one of the few ways you really can do more with what you have, or sometimes, hopefully not less. But
Cool. All right, so we have people lined up. Why don't we start over here?
Hi, my name is Rosellen Downey, and my question is for Ben. I was curious with the LA Times. I lived and worked in LA for 5 years in the entertainment industry, and the entertainment industry is obviously prevalent in LA, and I was wondering what you do with data relating to the entertainment industry and data mining that for the readership there.
Well, we just, this year before the Academy Awards, did a data-based investigation thing where we published for the first time ever an analysis of the members of the Academy. This was a data project we did where we were essentially leaked a list. Am I allowed to say this? Yeah, we were essentially leaked a list of people who are in the Academy, which is secret. And then through a very tedious process, we set up an internal database that had reporters then individually verifying the people, collecting their age, race, and gender, and then using that to do an analysis that found that the Academy is, surprise, surprise, overwhelmingly old, white, and male.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, Gerald Rich. Another toss-up question for you guys. What was your hardest hack?
People.
Skepticism.
Yeah.
In the newsroom, yeah, I would say skepticism sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, hack like a project that you guys like.
Oh, a project.
Sorry, a project. Yeah, sorry.
All right. Well, in the one that I showed, I mean, it's just very basic. The data was in a website. The project about the phone numbers and phone calls and stuff. The thing is that, well, we talked a little bit about open data here and open data laws, and Brazil has one. But the thing is that the government is forced to release data, but it's not forced to release data in a usable format. So they don't only release things in PDFs, they do that, but they also release it in websites, and then you phone them and say, give me access to your database so I can get your data, and say, that is dangerous. You should not do that. So you're basically forced to hack them sometimes and get the data yourself. That's the main challenge that we faced over there. It doesn't happen here in the US, but it does happen also in Spain, where I'm from.
I'll throw one more thing into this. I'm a professional software developer, leading a team of professional software developers. Making software is easy. We like it. It's what we do for fun. It's the editing that's hard. It's the journalism that's hard. It's figuring out what to name that column. It's figuring out when to use a map and when not to use a map. It's the making the right software is very difficult and requires many of the same thought processes as editing a regular story.
I'll quickly come back to the subject of dealing with big data. We did a project just before Christmas, which was a pretty nerve-wracking one in that we had to get a sort of mixed team of academics who were all very talented data scientists to understand a 3-week deadline, which was kind of a little bit foreign to them. But we basically had 2.5 million tweets, which pretty much covered the entire of the period of the London riots last year. And with the help of the academics, we were able to analyze those. And in that 3-week period, we also devised a way of then basically playing back the evolution of certain rumors through Twitter. And I think that was a very hard project from kind of every angle, not least that a lot of the things I was showing earlier were originally done with Flash. That's actually a pretty mature set of tools for doing animated interactive visuals. And having to now start building those things with open standards has been a real challenge. And I won't go into all the details, but doing something that's kind of as complex as what we would previously build in Flash in 3 weeks is a stretch.
Question over here.
I'm curious about, bringing together traditional journalists and traditional technologists. And I really see that that's what we're talking about here. We're talking a crossover. Is it, on your teams, do you have more technologists or do you have more journalists, or who do you bring to the table?
So our team, unusual for this field, is made of almost all people who were programmers first and then found journalism, either because they believed in the mission or the religion of it, or they wanted to make things they could show their mom. No, really, we have to make an emotional appeal to hire software developers to come work in this stupid business. But I love it.
I think we are more journalists than technologists, as I've said, but from the technology side, you have to find the people who value data, doing things, building things, discovering knowledge, sharing data as a way of innovation, and that they have a different motivation. I know different technology profiles, and the ones who feel something for this, they are not so easy to find, and just like changing the world a little bit. That's what we want them to feel, and this is how we engage him. So that's it.
In my case, in the team that I used to lead until December last year, it was one jack of all trades, which was me, journalist, as you know, and graphic designer also, but above all, a journalist. 4 graphic designers, infographics designers, and 2 developers. We hired 2 developers in the last year that I was there, and it was a huge change for us.
Our team is called the Data Desk, and it sort of exists more in our imagination than in the org chart. We don't really have a boss. We all work for different departments, but we're a crazy team, and that includes the kind of older computer-assisted reporting team that preceded a lot of the internet work. That's Doug Smith, data analyst, Sander Poindexter. They write in SAS and do classic census, old-school car stuff. Malloy Moore, who's a converted librarian, who does a lot of work for us too, cleaning data, working with data. She's getting better. She's learned some Django. And then myself and Ken Schwenke, who are sort of journalism school students converted into computer programmers. And if you want to become one of those people, you could do what I did, which is go to the University of Missouri and the National Institute for Computer Assisted Reporting. Big up your chest. It's called NICAR. And that's they have a graduate program, and that's a great way to spend some time doing real journalism and real programming at the same time and meet everybody in the field and get plugged in. I'd recommend it.
So I've got 7 people on my team, and I could tell you about the fact that we have a more or less half and half male-female split. I could also tell you about the fact that we embrace a number of ethnicities, including cyberpunk. but I want to tell you what actually brings it, and also in terms of skills, we've got developers, we've got journalistic backgrounds, and we've got a wonderfully spirited Portuguese lady called Mariana, who is just a kind of force of nature. But what brings everyone on the team together is the fact that everybody is very pragmatic. Everybody is capable of seeing the Guardian campaign this year is all about the whole picture, but everyone on my team is capable of looking at the kind of whole of a story that we're trying to get to, and not letting details bog us down or get in our way. We tend to try and move quite fast, and having everybody able to just find a new way of doing something at kind of like last minute notice is pretty important.
Thank you. I'm Rasmus Nelson from the Reuters Institute at the University of Oxford. So one very quick question and then a slightly longer one. The quick one is, does anyone of you know whether the things you're engaged in actually make money for the company that you work for? And then the second one, which sort of feeds off that one, is many of you come from organizations that dedicate large amounts of resources to what you're doing. What do you think are the takeaways for smaller newsrooms, which are the newsrooms of the future, but also most of the newsrooms of today cannot assign 14 people, cannot run a website like The Guardian, amazing as it is. That is a loss-making website. I think The Guardian lost £40 million last year. 20% operating loss is not a very attractive proposition for most news organizations. So I think we all appreciate the value of what you're doing, that you're doing amazing, innovative work, but I suppose that there are two questions. One, what is the business of this? And what are the takeaways from organizations who don't have the kind of resources that the great newspapers and great news organizations that you represent have to dedicate to this?
I think that I'm going to get started with that. I don't have a good answer for the first one. I don't think that anyone in this room has a good answer for the first question. But I guess that one thing that it can be brought to the table by this kind of journalism is that you can bring attention to your own organizations, but doing things that nobody else is doing out there. But that's not a very good answer. The second question I can answer, and the thing is that you can do very good data journalism, and Angelica addressed that in her presentation, by using Excel and Illustrator. That's what I do. I'm not a good programmer. I know a little bit about programming, a little bit of JavaScript, ActionScript, but I'm not a good programmer. 90% of my work as an infographics designer and an information visualizer is done in Excel and Illustrator. I usually call that low-tech visualization. And in fact, one of the things that I do in my courses at the University of Miami at the beginning of each semester is to try to take out the fear that students have for this kind of journalism. And I basically tell them, you don't really need to have very deep computer skills to do this kind of journalism, because it's about the story, it's about storytelling and extracting stories from the data. And you can do that with pen and paper sometimes. Of course, if you know programming, that can help, and that will help down the road. But at the very beginning, Excel and Illustrator, and that's it. So that's what small newsrooms can do. Start investing in tools that are easy to learn, easy to understand, and Angelica mentioned some of them: Tableau, Excel, Illustrator, things that can be learned very fast and can be very effective. And down the road, you can learn the advanced stuff that the New York Times does, or the Guardian does, or everybody else in this panel does.
My personal opinion is that all these new small startup newsrooms, if they want to have big impact and do investigative work that makes a difference, they need to have at least one person who's a specialist at doing data analysis for investigative work. I can't tell you that our methods have a track record of making a lot of money, but I can tell you they have a track record of getting great stories and kicking ass. And so if your goal, even if you're like a nonprofit, is to kick ass, you should have somebody who can do this stuff.
Brian?
I'm going to run this calculation when I get back to the newsroom so I can answer this definitively, but I feel that our team, man-hour-wise, produces just as many page views as any other team in the news organization. So the page views divided by man-hour number, I think our ratio is probably pretty solid compared to the rest of the newsroom. Does that make us any money? No, because our whole business model is broken, right? So, I'm not going to take the blame for that.
Right. Yeah, and if you're just talking about page views, you can say, like the homicide blog that we do, we automate all these blog posts that come out and then just do a minor amount of work to clean them up. So the actual time it takes to make the blog is next to zero. But nobody's going to buy ads.
Sorry, just on the business side of thing, it's true that the old model is broken, but it's not everything that's equally broken. And I think that's an important distinction, whether you're throwing away a lot of money or losing a little bit of money. I mean,
Right.
from the point of view of the business.
Yeah. Right. Angelica, did you have something to add?
We really think this is innovation, and this is the business for this is to stay in the business. This is the raw material of the future, and this is the audience is there. So these data applications will transform into mobile services, and so you can demand more information directly from your news organization or from your data provider. We think we're convinced this is directly related to innovation and growth.
Can I ask a heretical question on that topic? So we did the Academies project. And so the LA Times, like on my computer, not that one, but a different one, we have the exclusive list of everyone who's in the Motion Pictures Academy. No one else has it outside of the Academy. You could probably sell that, right? People who want to market their movie for the awards. Hey, I want to send a package to everybody in the Academy to let them know to vote for, for Kate Winslet or whatever. If the business people came to me, which they haven't, and said, hey, let's sell it, should I do it?
No. Oh, sorry.
Hi, my name is Carla, and I thought about this question when I was looking at Angelica's data and Ben's data. What do you all do to make sure the data that you are reporting or portraying is accurate, understandable, and not taken out of context?
Our data is taken from official public records, so this doesn't mean that the data is accurate, but that's somewhere we start with, because before we had nothing. Okay. So that's it.
Okay, so anybody else very, very quickly?
Yeah, I mean, there are data that you cannot see if it's true or not because it's from official sources, and many times, official sources are not accurate, but that's what you have to deal with, and that happens every day in journalism. The other thing that you can do, and that is done by everybody, is that every time that you have the opportunity to talk with an expert about the data that you have in your hands, that's what you do. So you run a data analysis yourself. And we did that with education stories in Brazil when I was there. So we did a story about education in Brazil, and we ran the data, we analyzed the data, and once we had the graphic ready, we showed the graphics and the data to specialists in education to contrast what we have to tell, and to make sure that the story that we have in our hands was reliable. So that's what you have to do. It's very basic answer, right? That's what journalists do all the time.
Super quick question over here.
Sure. Yesterday we heard about how journalism is becoming more democratic through the online medium, how pretty much everybody can create content and publish it, put it out there for everybody. What you guys are talking about today is how journalism is becoming much more specialized, that you need to have very special skills to be able to do that. So do you see a dichotomy there, and how does it play out for the future of democratic journalism via online?
So in response to that, and also going back to the previous question, which was about the way that we can share what we do, or the way that organizations like ours are perhaps privileged. I'll get another plug-in for our MISO project. I think what we're trying to do there is democratize data journalism. I think we're trying to show the way that we do things, and we're trying to make it so that every piece we publish ultimately will be something that anybody can take as a starting point for their own piece.
I mean, that's kind of the point of the Show Your Work t-shirt, right? We blog, we explain how we did the data stories, we release with the code, with documentation, so people can go build their own sort of work like ours, and we release the data sets for every single thing we publish. So we're trying to spread this thing out. We're trying to train both our peers in the industry and also the public about how to do this stuff.
Okay, Rosenthal's going to yank us off stage. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. This was fabulous, fantastic, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you very much. But before the coffee, we have the prizes of today. So we have for